Hello, this is old Mr. Kent of MrKent.com, and this video is about my e-bike and how I put a riser on the handlebar stem. And when I first got it, the handlebars were straight up. They swooped up, and I didn't pay much attention at first because I was so excited about riding it for the first couple of weeks. But the bars were quite just straight out from my arms, and I'm a little guy, and so my arms were straight while I was trying to ride the bike, and so it started to irritate my arthritis. And so one of the things I did was to loosen them and roll them back toward me, and that brought them back really nice, but it also dropped them down to where they were really low. And so then I decided after a while that I should probably put a riser that'll hold up the handlebars a little further on the stem. And this is what I got at Amazon. And it's easy. You loosen the two bolts, the hex bolts, and lift the handlebar off in one hand, and then you have this in the other hand. Just set it down over the stem, and then put the handlebar back down over the top of the extender. So it's easy to change. But anyway, and then they have those extra rings that you can place beneath the handlebars or leave them above the handlebars. And on the first ride that I will show you here, where I ride around on some of the roads I like to ride on, I left all the risers on top, all the rings on top, because I didn't want to overdo it. But then I found out that it was still a little bit too low, and I came back. And so the second part of the second ride I take on this video is after I have placed all those two rings down near the bottom. So here we go on the first ride, and I'll also tell you a couple of stories while I'm riding. I should probably start with the very first ride that I crashed on when I was about 5. I was going down the hill to my neighbor's brick patio, and the front wheel hit the edge of the brick patio, and that's all I remember because it knocked me out. And then in a previous video, I talked about getting knocked out after I went down a hill as fast as I could after I just learned to ride a bicycle. And there's some puddles left from the big storm we had a few weeks ago. And so anyway, we're coming up here to the housing development. And so I'll go ahead, and there we are. We're coming in, and this is where my grandson likes to go to play in the park. So this is how we get in there. When I was in high school, though, I rode my bike a lot. I rode it, and we lived 14 miles south of Seattle, and so I'd ride into Seattle. And one of the things I liked to do was they had a big, long viaduct over the switching yards, the train yards, and so I could just ride to there and sit and watch the switch engine work. The switch engine they had when I was in high school was still a steam locomotive, and so that was fun to watch. And by the way, see that lady there? I waved at her. She wouldn't wave back. Kind of a snob. Anyway, so another thing I'd like to do was in Seattle, I would ride down along the waterfront and look at the ships and boats. I've always loved boats and stuff. So I'd look at the different boats and the ships and stuff along the waterfront. And then this park to the right is where my grandson likes to go and play on the play set. And I've got a video of how the Mini 2 does such a good job of flying over Wi-Fi areas. And then also, now here I'm going to take a shortcut and go home because I realized that the handlebars still aren't high enough. But also, I used to ride my bike around Lake Washington, which you couldn't really see the lake much of the time, but it was a good ride. And I'd ride around Lake Washington, and it would probably take me about maybe 2 or 3 hours of just regular riding. And that would wear me out. No, it didn't wear me out. I was a teenager, and so here I am. We're leaving the housing development and heading back home. But riding around Lake Washington was a good exercise, and I'd ride. And I used to ride my bike all over Seattle. I mean, I knew Seattle almost like the back of my hand from all the different places I rode to the parks. I rode to the parks and everywhere. So that was kind of, just what I did when I had spare time. And I had a lot of spare time. When I was in high school, where I lived, there just wasn't any jobs for high school kids. And so I just had a lot of spare time. And then one time, I got all enthused and I decided, okay, I'm going to ride my bike up to Snoqualmie Pass. Now, Snoqualmie Pass is on the Cascade Mountains, and that's the divides the state from the east and the west. So anyway, I didn't quite make it. There's a nice guy. He waved at me, the guy in the little four-wheeler there. So I'm coming back so I can take the handlebar off. And like I said, it's not hard to do. You just hold the handlebar in one hand and do the spacer thing in the other hand and so forth. So anyway, I rode it, but I didn't quite make it to the top because as you got to the top, it was a little more steep. But that was a fun ride because it took me all day. And, of course, when I came down, it was easy coming down, but I had to stop and rest once in a while because it kind of wore me out. So here we come back, and then what I'll do is I'll just take off those two bolts right there at the top ones at the handle. Those are the handlebar bolts, and I'll loosen those. And then that's when I took I put the two rings beneath and just had one up above there, and so then it raised the handlebars. And when I was riding my motorcycle, one of the things that we learned was if you want a nice, comfortable ride, your forearms should probably be horizontal as much as possible. If they're horizontal, you get a much more comfortable ride. So what I did was I took the handlebars off and put two of the rings down below and put the handlebars back on, and decided, okay, here we go. We're going to go out and test it again. And so as I'm coming down this road, this guy in the truck, I waved at him, and he was kind of a snob. He wouldn't wave back. Anyway. All right, so now I told you about when I was in high school. I'll tell you about when I was in college, and I took my bike to college, okay? So I'll start out with one of the dumbest things that I ever saw happen was it was winter day. It was they were doing construction, and I was going along this muddy part of the campus where the street was all dug up and it was muddy. And there was this girl coming to she was walking along on the sidewalk to cross the muddy street. And she had her arms full of books and everything. And I'm riding on the street, and I thought she would stop. But the girl just walked right out in front of me. And I ran into her, knocked all of her books into the mud. And she wasn't too happy with me. And when I got this bike, it was one of the first. This was back when they were just coming out with the 10-speed bikes, and I had got a good deal on one at a store, but it didn't come with any fenders. So after being up in Bellingham, Washington, where it rains a lot, I decided, okay, I'll buy me some fenders. And so I bought the fenders, but they didn't come with any supports to go down by the sprocket. I just got fenders. And so then I decided, okay, well, I'll just go ahead and use the old metal coat hangers. So I bent them around and did a pretty good job of making coat hangers to hold my fenders. Only thing is, coat hangers were the fenders would wobble back and forth against the wheel as I was riding along. And so that was okay with me. I didn't mind too much until one day when I was there was this path that I took going up to where I worked in the kitchen in the morning, and I was on my way up this path, and there was this young couple. They were walking down the path, and of course the path went through a bunch of trees, so there was ruts and all kinds of things. And so I got it in the low gear, and I'm leaning way over the front wheel, and I'm pedaling as hard as I can to go up the hill. And once again, my front wheel, don't worry, I didn't come close at all. The camera makes it look like I came close to that guy, but I didn't. Anyway, I was leaning over the front wheel. The front wheel hit a tree, like a root, and the front wheel stopped, and I rolled over the wheel and crashed again. crashed again. So anyway, that was an interesting thing. But the time that the fenders let me down was when I was going to summer school, and I had a project in electronics class I had finished, and I was headed home to my apartment, and I on my bicycle, and I didn't have any way to carry it, except in the left hand I carried my project, and in the right hand I rode the bike and steered it. So I was going down the hill, and my bike, the fenders started rattling, like they did, back and forth. Well, then, wouldn't you know, as I'm going down this hill, my back fender jammed against the wheel, and then the wheel grabbed it and pulled it around, so now it's underneath the rubber tire, and I'm skidding down the hill, going cattywampus and everything, holding on to my project with one hand, trying to balance the bike with the other hand. And when I finally, and I couldn't stop because I had my hand on the right handlebar, and that's the back brake. So I just had to kind of wait until I got to a level spot and drag my feet and pull myself over. And this kid was walking down the hill, and he saw me. He had watched me come down, and he said, "You were going sideways part of the time." So anyway, and then the last one is I parked my bike out behind Old Main, and somebody messed with the brake adjustment. And so as I was getting ready to go, I put my books on the back, and I started down the little hill, or it's a pavement thing, and it went around an old wooden building. It was a classroom, and so I'm coming down there, and I'm looking down at the brake adjustments things, and I adjusting the brake, and I didn't pay much attention, and all of a sudden I crashed into the side of the building. Well, there was people in the building, and of course when they heard the crash against the wall, they jumped up to see what it was, and these old double hung windows, they raised the windows, and I was laying in the flower bed, and they looked up, I looked up, and they looked down at me, and there I was laying down. And there was a half a dozen people looking out the windows up above me. So anyway, that's the story of my e-bike riser, and those are the 2 rides I took. You got to see some of the places I ride. I want to thank you for watching, and God bless.